All right, welcome back to our special coverage. We continue to cover the RBI policy and some of the important comments coming in from the RBI governor on the Paytm issue. And to discuss all of that, we have an esteemed panel of guests standing by. We have Tv Mohandas Pai, the chairman of Aarin Capital, who's joining in now. We'll also have market expert Prakash Diwan with us. On the policy side, we also have Soumya Kanti Ghosh from State Bank of India, Pranjal Bhandari of HSBC, Ashish Vaidya of DBS Bank India, and Neeraj Gambhir of Axis Bank. Gentlemen, Pranjal, all of you, thank you for joining in. Let me first start with the issue of Paytm. And Mr. Mohandas Pai, you heard the governor, talk about the fact that these actions have been taken on Paytm Payment Bank on account of the severe regulatory lapses. But that is not to say that the RBI is against innovation, against the fintech ecosystem. Your first thoughts on what you made of the matter and the comments coming in from the governor?
No, I agree with the governor's comment because I heard him very clearly. He said our policy is to give regulated entities adequate time to comply. And the RBI has given Paytm 22 months from whatever we know. And over 22 months, there have been multiple audits, multiple visits, multiple reports, including by third-party audits. And in case the Paytm is not able to comply despite all this and despite repeated warning, they should face regulatory action. So RBI has been fair. RBI has given them adequate time. 22 months is a long time. Don't forget, they asked Razorpay to stop onboarding new customers. They asked HDFC Bank to stop onboarding new customers. So RBI has been extremely consistent, and they've given adequate time to Paytm. And what I am shocked about is, what are the independent directors of a listed company like Paytm doing? Twiddling their thumbs? They should have been very careful. They should have formed a committee of independent directors, taken it independently, spoken to the regulators, and made sure the company complies. They have let down their shareholders. They have not complied because whenever there is a regulatory action by a regulator in any country, when there are very large compliance issues which could impact the survival of the company, the independent directors should step up because there's a management failure. Very clearly, there's a management failure in Paytm Bank today, Paytm's payment bank today. And sadly, the investors are paying the price for a management failure. And I think what the RBI has done is perfectly right. It's not against innovation. It is not against new things. It is not against fintech. Because as you grow bigger and bigger, fintechs have to comply. You can't have a situation when you become so big and you don't comply with the regulator when all others are complying, all others are regulated entities, and the system is the same for everybody. You can't get a special dispensation for very long. When you're very small, it is fine because, you do some innovation at the edge, it doesn't impact the system. When you go to a particular size, and Paytm has been pretty big size, you have to comply and you must take it very, very seriously.
These are pertinent points, Mr. Mohandas Pai, on, the board supervision and the justified action from the regulator. But I wanted to ask you, given the gravity of the concerns that RBI seems to have highlighted, what is the way out for Paytm Payment Bank? What is the way out for Paytm that will also get impacted? In a sense, would you say this is the end of the road for Paytm Payment Bank? And, what happens next?
No, I won't say it's the end of the road for Paytm Payment Bank because that is a decision that the RBI has to take. What the RBI has done is that you can't onboard new customers, and from February 29th or whatever it is, you can't continue business. What I would expect is the independent directors of Paytm Independent Bank should have a talk with RBI, should look at all the non-compliances, promise RBI, but within so-and-so time they will do it, and request RBI to come back for an inspection and give them some time, and then say, if we comply, please allow us to continue business. Because RBI could shut them down, and RBI has shut down many companies. It's a prerogative of RBI. You can't question the prerogative of RBI because RBI has given time. You see, the confusion has been created because in the letter of RBI, final letter, they said we're going to take this regulatory action. They should have put a sentence there. We have asked Paytm over the last 22 months to clean up the act, blah, blah, blah. And we had multiple visits, multiple audits, multiple this thing. Despite giving them 22 months, despite all this, they have not been able to comply. And now, therefore, we do this. If they have done that, I think, it would have been very clear to the public. Because I see a lot of sympathy among fintechs who are saying, oh, you can't do this. Why are you doing this? Some group of people writing letters to do this. I mean, the finance ministry will not revoke this. They will not do it. RBI will not revoke it. I mean, you can't be susceptible to pressure from a small lobby to say, oh, we are the greatest on the planet. We are very different. We are very different. You know, you must treat us different. How can, I mean, it's a question like RBI says of compliance, of protecting consumers and protecting the integrity of the financial system. So I think there's a failure. There's a failure there, and RBI has given adequate time. If RBI has not given them time, we could plead with RBI, please give us more time. We are in the process of compliance. RBI has not given time. And one of the things that comes out is that the system was the same. What about the confidentiality of data with a payment bank? The data of a bank has to be confidential. It cannot be revealed to anybody, including the owner. It has to be treated as a private asset because it is not the property of the bank. The bank is a trustee of the data of everybody. Now, if Paytm, the holding company, gets access to all the data and everything, that's a breach of confidentiality. You can't do that.
Mr.
You
Pai,
can't have the same system. Yeah.
You know, you seem to then, differ with a handful of startups that have penned this letter to the regulator, to the government to reconsider this action and give a window of opportunity to Paytm to explain themselves. You seem to differ from them.
No, I differ from them because they don't seem to understand the gravity of the situation. You can't have a cowboy management running in the financial sector. Now, you got Dr. Soumya Kanti Ghosh on your panel, right? He's a very eminent economist. He's from the SBI. You ask him what focus SBI has on compliance. The chairman personally takes responsibility for compliance. They have compliance system. They comply with everything, and they've been doing it for 250 years. So all HDFC Bank has been doing it. HDFC Bank was wrapped in the knuckles. The HDFC Bank is the largest private sector bank, extremely well-run bank. And RBI is right. SEBI has taken action against NSE. SEBI has taken action against regulated entities. The duty of the regulator to make the system. And if a group of fintech founders feel they're above the law, they're above regulation, they must think again. I would have respected if the independent directors of Paytm Payment Bank had come together, written to RBI, saying that, look, we will now set up a group, we will do all this, we promise you, please consider. That would have been something. Because these are third parties. I don't think this group of people know all the matters about what has happened in the last 22 months. Because even the governor said, look, a lot of things have happened in the last 22 months. I don't want to get into details. Because, that is between the payment bank and RBI. So this is a case of a lackadaisical attitude in a regulated business. When you run a business you're regulated, you have to comply. There are no two opinions. And if there's some latches there, you must get time. And they've been given 22 months. Or 22 months you're not able to comply. Then what do you want to do? You want somebody to not comply with regulations which have been laid on for everybody and do whatever you want. I mean, you can't do that, right? That's not the way the financial system works.
Yeah, Mr. Mohandas Pai, do stay on. Let me have a quick word with Mr. Prakash Diwan as well, because the stock, as we can see, is down by close to 10% now as we speak for Paytm. Mr. Diwan, quick thoughts on what the governor said. What's next for Paytm?
Ritu, I wish I knew that so clearly, but yeah, what seems to be evident from all these details that were shared at the conference. That it's the good news is that it's not a systemic issue. It's not something where the RBI is concerned about certain trends in the way some of the fintechs would operate. It's very specific to this business, to this company. And the last couple of days we saw some bottom fishing. People probably thought it was whatever damage had to be done in terms of the Paytm payment bank issues would probably not rub off onto the main listed stock, but then that doesn't seem to be the case. So till they find a solution to get out of this attack, this delinking themselves with the payment bank business, I think the main business will probably keep getting impacted negatively. But surprisingly, the last comment that we saw from the deputy governor very clearly told you that there's absolutely no concern about the Paytm business, and that is the one that we actually look at on the listed space, right? So if that was the case, it should not have more bearing than what it's already the damage that's already been done. But I think it's more of lack of certainty and lack of clarity in terms of the next steps. That's what's plaguing the market's psyche right now, Ritu. So I would believe it's still a falling knife. It hasn't changed much from the last few days, the last couple of weeks, in fact, ever since this news broke out. The market will probably move on to better opportunities and not bother too much about whether there's revival which is imminent or not.
Well, still a falling night. Mr. Pai, just final thoughts before we let you go. What is the larger takeaway from this Paytm saga for the startup ecosystem for fintechs going forward from here?
The message to fintechs, to all innovators and startups is, when you are in a regulated industry, please comply, please put in processes, please have good governance, please make sure you do regular audits, please talk to the regulator and work with them to make sure you're on the straight path. If you're a small company doing innovation the edge, it is fine. Even if you make mistakes, the regulator will forgive you. But when you become larger, you have to comply. Compliance is important because of all this. Don't act like cowboys who believe that they are the greatest people in this planet. We've seen many regulatory failures. We've seen what happened to Bharat Pay. Byju's has not been compliant with regulations in submitting accounts. We have seen that, some motor company, right? I forget the name, not compliant. I mean, they don't pay attention. This is a problem with all these, founders. They must pay attention. Whether you're small or big, you have to pay attention. You have to do it. You have to follow the law. You have to follow regulations. That is the message. And happy that the governor is saying we're going to release FAQs for them, because it's not about innovation. This is not about young fintechs. Fintechs should be encouraged. Innovation should be encouraged. Technology disruption should be encouraged. But they have to be within an umbrella of the light regulation, then full regulations for a period of time. We can't let them come into a regulated system. We are dealing with people's savings and all lack of KYC and walk amok. That cannot go on for long. And here in this case, RBI has given it 22 months. For 22 months, if you're not able to do it, 22 months, I think, was much before the listing. Am I right? I don't know. Somebody there in the panel should say, well, 22 months was much before the listing. Now I wonder whether this notice was discussed as a risk factor at all. I don't know. It should be there in the risk factor. So I think, people have to be careful, follow the law, focus on regulation, focus on compliance, do compliance audit, have independent directors on the board, and put them in charge of compliance so that they have oversight. And if they don't fail as a management, take it seriously, because RBI is not going to keep quiet and MCA is not going to keep quiet. They will enforce the law, and there is a law that we have to obey.
Okay. Mr. Pai, just very quick last question. You don't expect the startup ecosystem to be impacted? No loss of confidence of investors?
No, there's no loss of confidence, because this happens all around the world. This happens all around the world. There's a creative tension between innovators and fintechs and regulators all around the world. There's a common issue all around the world in this area. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. That's very important, sir. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Prakash, just one last word from you. You heard the chapter and verse, how the governor explained how many bilateral contacts they have had with the Paytm management, and how this was announced at the end of 22 months of, toing and froing with the management. We don't know. Mr. Pai has raised the issue of independent directors, whether they bilaterally engaged with them. We don't know. But repeatedly, the governor said there was bilateral engagement with the management. Now, what's the advice to investors in the stock?
Lata, that's what I was sharing with Ritu. There's not much that investors can do except for, at the moment, stepping aside and waiting for 29th Feb. I don't think the language of the press conference leaves any scope for an extension on this deadline. So whatever has to happen within the next 20 odd days. And investors will be better placed not to add to it, not to try averaging out, not bottom fishing, because this is something where there has to be some finite, more definitive decision making that will happen at the end of the RBI, and existential risk on the company's payment bank needs to get sorted before you start buying into it. So the advice is just to stay away. If you are unfortunately invested, you get a chance to exit, you probably would have to look at exiting from the stock.
No, okay. Fair point. And